Hey, good morning. I don't normally jump straight into photography and video, but as you can see, there's a highway just behind me there. And on this side, just off in the distance there, there's a nice little cascade. And I thought, I'm gonna have to come down, shoot this now because there's mist rising off it. But once I've shot there, I'm gonna duck around the corner. There's a bend in the river and with some really nice shores along there that I saw from satellite footage. This is also where a lot of tourists are camping out in their vans, so I don't want to disturb them at 6 o'clock in the morning. Here I am. This is the scene. All right, got my camera set up, almost. There's a lot of activity around here. There's loads of birds. It's really quite exciting. I want to do a long exposure, and one of the things that I've made the mistake of so many times is to not use this. This goes over my viewfinder, so I'll just flick that off the eye cup and then put this one over the top. That actually stops light leaking in through the camera system onto the sensor, which obviously if you've got a mirrorless camera that doesn't really matter, but when you're using an SLR, that's a very real issue. So I'm going to get my first shot without too much thought, because the light's just hitting the trees. Now, before I go into a long exposure, I just want to capture some of that mist that's coming up. The Polariser isn't able to do too much just because of the angle that I'm on. So the light's hitting the water and bouncing straight back up. And you can see as I turn that filter, not much is happening. You kind of get this low point, and I'm going to go with that. Okay, so that's just F5, but what I might do is just push that up to F14. 1/6 of a second is just giving a little bit of movement, but what I want in this particular case is really smooth, and I want an ultra long exposure, and hopefully that will get a lot of the sun up in the background as well as it's lifting. So for half a second, I think a 6-stop is going to give me about 30 seconds. So I'll give that a go first. Okay, F18 gives me 20 seconds. Well, that is much closer to what I'm after. Down the bottom here, all the water's kind of churning around. Once it's hit the bottom of that cascade, the water's just kind of going in all directions. And with the 30-second exposure, 20-second exposure, you can see that's all smoothed out, but not completely. There's still some shadow lines on those main currents. So why don't I go the next step and go up to 10 stops. That should double that time. Because I'm looking at an exposure longer than 30 seconds, I need to go into bulb mode. And when you're in bulb mode, you need to open and close the shutter. There is an option for a time up to 5 minutes, but for the life of me, I cannot find it this morning. I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way, and I'm going to press the shutter, start my stopwatch. There's a little bit of a light leak, so I'm going to put this over the top like so. Okay, that's it. Oh, you're kidding me. Turns out my camera has a light leak. And when the sun hits just this edge here, just where the lens hits the mount, when you're doing long exposures like this, big problem. When you get frustrated like this, like I clearly am here, you still need to push through. You can't just pack up and go home. You've got to figure out what the problem is, solve it, and then just calm back down again and get back into the moment. Oh, there's 128. Okay, that's really lovely. And the reflections are just there. It's quite common when you get out into the field and you've got an idea in your head of what you need to achieve, that when that doesn't happen, frustration can set in. And the last thing you need is to be panicking or getting really upset over what clearly should be a simple process. Hopefully, once you've worked through the problem or around the problem, then you've got the correct mindset to be able to then focus on what you need to do. I don't know how many times I've actually just packed up and gone home because things just weren't working for me. But I really, really want this shot. And I really want to share this vision I have. The reflections in this water, wow, they're really lighting up. Because I turned the CPL around to increase the reflections, this whole front area is now this soft grey with some really soft reflections in it, but the reflections in the water above, oh wow. I'm going to go down to the bottom, closer to the water now, and we'll see what we can get down there. Really quick 2-second walk to get down to the bottom. But what I want to show you is the view from this angle. It doesn't look like much from here, but what I'm thinking is I'm going to take out all of this area here and focus just up the top with the reflections up there. So I'm going to get out my longer lens, my 70 to 200. First thing I need to do is make sure I got the right composition. Okay, and then put my filter on. Don't actually get much of a reflection. Just lift that up a little. Just to balance it out. Zooming in, nicely focused on that foreground, and with say f18, that should give me plenty of depth of field to hopefully get the trees in the background as well. And not wanting to risk anything, I'm going to pop that over the top in bulb mode, another 1 minute 45. From my angle, I can see more reflection than what I can down at the camera angle. I need maybe this much, but I've got an extender on my tripod which will get me up to this high. So like this, voila. And even better, I can raise that right up to my eye level. Just wonderful. So here's the back of the camera for you, and similar composition, but what I've done is I've cut the top of the trees off, and I'll call it the horizon. The back of the water is here, so all of this below is reflection, and then this should come out that milky smooth ice-like reflection. And then it's a 1 minute 40 exposure, and look how those reflections are really starting to lift right now. Interestingly, I didn't put my cover over the camera mount. Different lens, different seal. So clearly it's the lens that's the problem, and I have busted that a couple of times. So it's quite possible that the seal's just not quite there. My parents actually live just up the road, and when my kids were younger, we used to come down there quite a bit. Yesterday, as we drove past, car park was chock-a-block, and there were people everywhere. That's why I had to come down so early in the morning, just to escape the crowds.
I wanna sing songs while making dinner and cutting potatoes and cubes. I wanna sing songs with soapy fingers.
It's really nice through here.
Washing the dishes.
This could be just what I'm looking for. Nice little bend in the river. Willow tree, nice current, and the river goes off in the distance. So this is currently 26 millimeters, and you can see you can actually get quite a bit of that scene in. We can push that down, but if I were to go up to 77, it's a whole different composition, and that also might be quite nice, but certainly you wouldn't get the entire scene in. I'm just looking straight down the river, and there's some nice sort of light happening up the top here, and the reflections are really lovely. And I want to accentuate those reflections. Underexpose just a little bit to really push those reflections up because they're really bright, and I want the water, like the darker water around, to really push those up by being a lot darker. So I'll just take a quick shot. That's f18.6 of a second. I'm in two minds here because I really like the way the water shows when it's like captured in that moment, but I also want a really smooth flow. I'm here, I've got a digital camera, I can do both. I'll do the shorter one first. Open that aperture up a little bit so I can decrease the amount of time. It's still got a little bit of a flow, but you can see the ripples as well. I really like the way that looks. I could possibly even go a little bit faster. I'm going to take a series of shots at various rates, and then I'm going to show you what I think is the best one. Follow me down to the water's edge, down this way. So while I was up there taking those shots, I saw where the willow tree is just touching the water and there's a strong current coming through. And I thought that would be really nice as a high speed shot. None of this long exposure stuff. And while I do enjoy my long exposures, I don't think it's suitable for this one. On this side there's a branch coming down hitting the water, and on this side there's another one just back in the distance, and I think this gives a nice framing of the water itself. And the way those reflections are sitting is just gorgeous. So I'm going to move my polarizer around, make sure I maximise that reflection without too much glare. I love the way the light is just kissing the top of these branches up here. What I might do is just lift that up, just so I get a little bit more of the branches. In fact, actually that's really nice there. And while I'm here, I may as well try for a longer exposure. So push the ISO right back down again, close that aperture down to f16, and then I can open that up to 0.4 of a second. Really good actually, so that slightly long exposure. In the foreground, the water's not really moving too much and the ripples are very slow, but in the background that water's racing through, and that's giving it a really nice flow as well. So I might slow that down even more to 0.6 of a second. You can experiment. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about what the best exposure is going to be. However, there's nothing stopping me from trying a few other things. And that's the beauty of experimentation. It just gives you that opportunity to get the shot that you envisage in your mind without the pressure of wondering if you're actually going to get the shot or not. So while I'm here, I've got that branch at the back and I'm going to zoom into it. It's probably not going to be anything, but it's worth a try. Actually, that's really cool. All right, let's slow that down to 1 second. I'm on F22, you know, and it doesn't really matter. I'll lift that up. I'm zoomed in all the way to 200 millimeters. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. And I'll just turn the polarizer around. Just reduce that glare as much as possible and see what we can get. It's what I love about coming up here. Staying with my parents, obviously, is the top of the list. But it's always nice to just duck out for a couple of hours. And there's always something around. You know, like I showed you before, I'm right next to the highway. And maybe less than a kilometre from my parents' home. And here we are in what is a dog run, but there is still beauty to be had, and there are still photographs that you can find. Don't be disheartened by what's around. There's always something. It's a matter of being curious. What's around the next corner, you know? Anyway, I'm almost back at the car, but there is one more thing I want to have a look at. A little bit further up, there's this old bridge from the old road, and it's falling apart, like it's in a serious state of disrepair. Clearly it hasn't been used for a long time. There's all sorts of stuff going on. There's power lines in the background. I don't know if you can see, but behind the bridge there's farmland. So there's a horse over there and some old buildings. It's really scrappy in the front. There's all sorts of rubbish underneath the bridge, but you know what? That's part of it. That's what this place is. So let's just take a photo. And it's not great. Let's walk down here. Whoa. I want to show you what's behind you there. I really quite like that. The old bridge above and the water down below with all the scrap, but there's nice reflections still. So I'm just going to spend some time picking up some shots in here. Zooming in. In fact, I'm going to go against what I normally do, which is manual, and just go to AV. If I get some of that tree in the foreground and open the aperture right up, so I've got that soft blur of the tree in the foreground and everything sharp in the reflections, and they're all silhouettes, and oh, it's just gorgeous. And the dappled light everywhere is just fantastic. Wow, I hope you like these. Let's come this way a bit more. Fantastic. Might open that up a little bit more. And this time I'm turning the polarizer around so I get maximum reflection. The branches that are lying in the water and reflecting, they're all super dark. So I'll get this really high contrast and they'll silhouette against the reflections in the water and against the background. That is magic. Thanks for coming out on this little exploration with me. It's really nice to get out of the house before everybody else gets up, and it gives me a chance to wake up properly, see some sights, take some really nice photos and share some great experiences with you. Sometimes it's not as exciting as you'd hope, but sometimes you just need that relaxation, that quiet start to the morning without being really pumped up, you know. I don't want a triple coffee in the morning. I just want something to slowly wake me up. And this is perfect. It's almost 8 o'clock now. There are people already swimming in the water down here. There's lots of people out walking their dogs. It's getting a little bit hectic. The car park's filling up. I hope you got something out of this just as much as I did. And I will see you on the next one.